Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session, probably not the right word, for this video, we're going to go ahead and look at this article that we just found. This is a article that's looking at the viewership statistics for the June Joust. That would, of course, be Overwatch in its current format, breaks into roughly monthly tournaments, and this was the first time, or the first time this season, that they've added hero bans back in. So we've got a couple things to break down here. Hey, viewership did decrease, as you guys can see in the thumbnail there, decreased by about 25%. We don't necessarily know, or at least I don't know yet, if that came from, was that it's the middle of the season, it's not the intro anymore, so we have less explosive viewership into that? Was that a people really hated hero bands in general? Was that a people hated specific hero bands? I don't know if the data can or will tell us that. We might need more time to get the answer to that. We might need to do polling to get the answer to that, which I'm, of course, not going to do. But this looks like it's using good hard data, and this is certainly not like strongly alarming, but a moderately alarming type thing. And then we've also had people are less locked up at home now as pandemic era restrictions have started to come away, which may be pulling away from viewership as well. Those are all things that we'd want to consider, but let's actually get into the article, read some bits here, and see what it has to say. Okay. And if any of you have questions, comments, things that you want to say, I will check in with chat throughout this, and then we'll do a longer form discussion at the end with chat in terms of what might be contributing to viewership, if you strongly agree, disagree with any of the article here. So we're going to take some look at some of the bits from the article here, and I have, of course, linked the article in the description below, so you guys can go check it out. I also linked a Reddit post discussing it. I didn't post to this post, but someone else can post to this post, post their thoughts, post a link here where their thoughts then are. Whatever you guys want to do, doesn't matter. Here we have this. If you want to find your way to either of these things, they're in the description because we're not stealing this person's work. We're saying, hey, this is their work. We're definitely sourcing their work, but we want to react to it. We want to talk to it. So, last weekend saw the conclusion, second Overwatch League tournament cycle, June Joust. Yeah, we don't really care about that. We see that compared to the May Melee, format changes, hero pools, we definitely know about that. Randomly selected heroes that had at least 10% tick rate through the previous edition were removed from the pool. So, in theory, there were more heroes that they would have picked from. There were more heroes that they could have picked from that could have been removed, but it was any hero with at least a 10% pick rate had a chance to be removed. Now, of course, these heroes won't have had a 10% pick rate, so they can't be banned for the next meta, the next tournament, whatever we want to call it, but we are going to see a shift. But now let's get into what's interesting in this article. Weren't met with much enthusiasm. We know that's because we had a pretty good, fairly diverse meta that had actually stayed fairly diverse, even though it has seen some shifting throughout a fair amount of time in the 3 or 4 months leading up to it. But hey, that could be a potential for why we saw viewership fall off. We had a good meta. We sort of went away from it with artificial hero bans. Overall discontent probably reflected in viewership numbers, which were slightly lower than May Mealy's figures. I think more than that based on what we saw. Sums up the viewership statistics is what we're seeing in the article. Great. So we can see the overall peak for the June Joust was 82,000 live viewers. Platform peak, K2. Okay, so those are the same thing. They're only really streaming on one platform. Yes, it's a little different in China, but for most of the world, they're streaming to YouTube. They had English and Korea here. We see English is making up the bulk of the viewership. I can actually zoom in a little more here so that you guys can see at 65,000 versus 16,000 language peak for Korean there. And then we see we had almost 5 million watch hours there. So that's a fair amount of time. They probably made some good ad revenue off that at least. That said, not enough to cover the cost of the league, but some good ad revenue nonetheless. As usual, pizza competition. So, during 91 hours of airtime, the June Joust tournament marked a total of 4.7 million watch hours, which we just saw here. That's a 25.4% decrease. So basically 25 and a half, 25 right on the dot, whatever we want to call it. In terms of decrease in watch time, and then average viewers, separate competition, which is 27.4% less than May Mealy's edition, and that is tuned in to spectate the competition. So the number of viewers decreased by a little bit more, which then the total amount of decrease in watch time, and that would make sense, probably due to a different either number of matches, different length of matches, etc. So 25, 27%, however you want to think of it. The more conservative would be a 25% decrease here. And that's alarming, but probably in the moderately alarming territory for a mid-season thing. 82,000 concurrent viewers was the grand finals, so that was the peak. As we go on here, we'll find that the peak here was in the finals. That's usually when we would expect a peak, that or the very beginning of a season, so that makes sense. Or when a team that's usually terrible, like season 1 Dragons, goes and wins, they might get a bunch of viewership there. But usually we would expect the finals of a joust like this, of a monthly brawl, whatever we want to call them, to have the peak in their tournament. So that's not too wild. Featured Showdown, Shanghai Dragons, and Dallas Fuel. Sure, don't care about the reward. 113 viewer peak. And if we compare that to the average, their average. Wait. Oh, okay. We're just comparing the peaks between the two. So the May Melee had their peak of 113 during the first week of qualifier events, whereas the June Joust had their peak in the finals. The finals would be more normal, but this would have been beginning of season stuff. So nothing too weird there. Maybe slightly concerning, but not very much so, that the beginning of the season got a little bit more than this, but honestly, that's what I'd expect. The most casual viewers are going to check in at the beginning and not later. Viewership comparison. Here we have the numbers compared between the two. That's fine. The number of hours of airtime was 1 hour less in total, it looks like, for the June Joust versus the May Melee. That helps us understand what numbers we're comparing here. We see this 80% of the viewership, 81.8, so 82 really is going to be English. That's fine. Then the rest comes in from Korean and French view spectators. Fine. Most popular teams. This is kind of interesting. We've got these are the most popular teams to watch. This isn't surprising. We've seen the Shock have won multiple titles. The Shock are a popular team attached to a state that has a huge population, so we'll naturally be like, hey, you're going to go with one of the three teams, and North California hates Southern California loosely. So, hey, Shock has a pretty big potential audience, plus they're a team that has had a lot of success. Sure, this makes sense. Then we see this, Dallas Fuel, Rain, Justice, and Titans. Cool. Did we have anything interesting to say about this? Looking at the top 5 teams by viewership, the differences between the top 5 are minuscule. One thing that could be contributing is, yes, that the most popular team got eliminated, but if the differences between these top 5 are minuscule, shouldn't have had that much of an impact. It's certainly not 25%. Second most was the Dallas Fuel, and they were the champions who almost managed to claim it. Champions of the previous almost got another victory here. Yep. As evidenced, viewership went down. We know that. We expect that. The 25% is potentially slightly alarming. Let's take a look. Okay, so here are their conclusions. First, it's somewhat common for opening events to have slightly more spectators than the rest of the regular season, of course, except final stages. Yep, and that's fine. 25% is too large for that, but that's fine. If it was 12%, 16%, I think we'd all be like, yep, that's normal. 25, maybe a little much. Not if we were comparing opening week to the month tournament here, but for comparing the entirety of the opening tournament to the second tournament, 25 is too big of a jump. For it to be just that. Second, the aforementioned format changes have likely had an impact on viewership of June Joust, though there's no feasible way to confirm this assumption. Not really, but more time will tell as we see more tournaments. And we also want to know, is it that people don't like the format and they don't want to watch when the format doesn't match their competitive queue for ladder format? Or is it a case of they don't like it this one specifically because we had a good meta? So this I'd like to split this into a 2 and a 2.5 in terms of their points, because those are slightly different points in my mind. And yeah, we can't measure it perfectly, at least not with the type of data that's being collected here. And again, if you guys have thoughts, I will get to chat in just a second. I just want to sort of get through the article first, and then we'll spend time discussing it. You guys know how this works. Third, the declining trend of Overwatch League viewership has been present in recent months, mostly thanks to the changes of the league's official broadcast from Twitch to YouTube. Yes, yeah, Twitch has Twitch was where the Overwatch audience was built before Overwatch League started, so Twitch has had that success. I mean, YouTube is still the bigger platform. There's a lot of eyeballs on YouTube, even in the video gaming world, but you moved from one place where you'd cultivated your audience to a new place, and now you're trying to cultivate your audience after a game's been out for a few years. That's going to be much more challenging. But also due to the COVID-19 pandemics, Owl's numbers are hardly comparable with the pre-pandemic times, and even though the June Joust was partially played on LAN, it will come back. Uh, excuse me. Even though June Joust was partially played on LAN, it will take the comeback of full-blown OWL events with fan attendance to be able to review the league's viewership results objectively. Well, I'm not sure that will be an objective result because then you'll be comparing apples to oranges. But yes, there is, as we see here, hey, something happened. Hey, people were more stuck at home before. Now they're not as stuck at home, so they're less likely to be watching an event at home as they are to be out with friends, out at bars, out drinking, out on hikes, out doing other things that are a little more accessible to them now. Or they'll be at work, and that means more hours commuting that they didn't have before because they were traveling. Okay, so that's that. Then they're plugging their stuff, which is fine. Let's talk about this. What do you guys think? Because I look at this and I go, hey, this makes sense to me. 25% is too alarming of a number, even with the factors that they sent. Not even with the factors that they sent here. It's too alarming in my mind for just this first factor. If we're considering that it's not week one versus the month, it's the entire month tournament versus the month tournament. Again, week one to now, that would be fine. But looking at this seems too extreme to me. I think this is true, but I think this is something that'll go away over time. I think people will get less concerned about this as this things goes on. And I think then there's also, hey, there's a general decline over time, which would be the more concerning thing. How much of this is permanent general decline over time versus opening too slight? Because opening to later week, that's fine. Any sport is going to have this. The other stuff is more trouble for the future of the Overwatch infrastructure. So let's catch up on chat here. So we have from Congex, being from Europe, it was impossible to watch most of the matches, but to be honest, it was all just muted in the background for OWL tokens anyway. Okay, so the watch times this month weren't as good for you as prior. That makes sense. Then we've got from Blah. I never watched Owl. The exception is when Temporal did reviews of Owl games. Yeah, and I started doing a little less reviews of Owl games because I could sense that viewership was dropping. I could feel that people weren't as interested. Temporal made it marginally interesting. They should hire him to go over the games. They should. That would be a good idea. Time zone was horrible for me in Ireland. So we have a lot of that. We have a lot of, hey, the watch times were bad. Even more so, it sounds like this season or this last tournament than they were in the previous tournament. So that's something that wasn't addressed here of, hey, was the game time difference? And was the game time actually different? Like, I haven't gone and checked. Was the play time significantly different? Were less interesting matches or less matches were being aired at times that were friendly to different parts of the globe? Winston is going to get banned. Did Orisa hit the playtime mark? She might have. Because the way they do their ban pool is, did they hit at least 10%? And she might have hit the number, which means she could get picked instead of Winston, or Ball might have hit the number and Ball could get picked instead of Winston. Like, Winston, most playtime, sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be the one to get banned. It depends on if the others hit the number. Okay, 20% of the watch time are people leaving OWL pages playing in the background for tokens. Oh, of course, but that's always been the case. Time zones in the UK was a bit janky, if I remember correctly. Okay, so UK in particular had rough times. So how much of the audience is UK? That's a great question. Think Activision Blizzard might have prepared for this number, which I think is why they are trying to drum up hype with Overwatch 2 instead of releasing small stuff over time. And that could be okay, except that their timetable on Overwatch 2 isn't looking terribly impressive. Like, I don't think we're going to be seeing Overwatch 2 in March of 2022. Just for example, I don't think that's going to be a Q1 2022 thing. We might get it in 2022, late 2022. We might get it in 2023, but we know we're not getting it in 2021. So, like, hyping up Overwatch 2, sure, good move, but what we've seen of Overwatch 2 it still sounds like they don't know what they're doing with a lot of hero abilities. They don't know if McCree's going to keep flashbang or not. They don't know what they're going to do with, with enough stuff that it's like, some of the UI has been reworked. We've seen some skill trees, but the skill trees are heavily with placeholders in there right now. So there's still a lot of work to be done on this game. Uh, Wait, I just joined. What is this about? That was long enough ago that I think now you have a grasp. Overwatch League viewership dropping. Why does the Titans have so much viewership? They never win maps. My guess on why they have so much viewership would be that they have a strong fan base from when they were a very strong team previously. My guess is that's what's going on because there's going to be some level of that. Um, yeah, I don't know for sure though. Okay. I only approve of teams depending on color schemes. Still kind of mad that they have city states that have nothing to do with any of the teams in there. I know. Do I think LAN live events will help cover the cost of Overwatch League or even make a profit? I think they could. Yeah, I think when the pandemic hit, it was really rough on Overwatch. I think that transition, Overwatch League sabotaged it. It didn't sabotage itself, but Overwatch League went into its season one, and it went into its season one, and that could have been fine. And the numbers were above what everyone was expecting. Everyone serious was expecting for season one, and season one was actually a success by most metrics from Overwatch League for Overwatch League, for the esport, for whatever you want to call it, perhaps for esports in general. Then we went into season two, and we got stuck on goats basically the whole way through. We changed it right at the end, but we basically got stuck on goats the whole way through. And while goats was a ton of fun to play, that was not particularly good for viewership. To go, hey, we're just going to goats like this, that was not particularly good for viewership. And that leads us into this isn't fantastic. This is going to cause us to bleed. This is not the success of season one. This is going to cause us to bleed. There were other issues that went on, don't get me wrong, but that was an issue. Then we went into season three, and it should have been, hey, we're going to have more LAN events rather than just the couple homesteads that we had during season two. And that should have happened. That should have been lovely, but it didn't. That didn't happen, and that was sort of the, oh shoot, things are going to collapse. Like season two was already looking like, whoops, we made a mistake. We had the option to catch lightning in a bottle here to be like, hey, this is going to be amazing, and it didn't. So then we go, hey, now we're in season three, and homesteads didn't happen. We weren't able, the homesteads didn't happen, didn't do the full transition to this, and there was still enough popularity that could have been. It wasn't going to be this anymore. It wasn't going to be, oh yeah, things are great, because lightning in a bottle, because hey, we did this, because we bled stuff, and games are going to get less popular over time if you don't make them stick, you don't turn them into a thing like they were trying to do, and you lost a lot of momentum with that. But homesteads could have still been a great thing, but as things are getting less popular, as you have season two happen, you have teams don't want to invest as much. Teams don't want to spend as much on this because it's not as much of a surefire thing. And then when you don't want to spend as much, it becomes less of an event thing. It becomes less of a fun activity to go do, and you potentially get into trouble. Then we have, oh, look, pandemic, you have that, and now we've sort of taken the wheels off it. So that's sort of a not their fault, but the wheels are sort of off the train, and I don't know that homesteads will now be able to be the thing, because Overwatch isn't a really new popular game anymore. Of course, on a grand scale, it's still popular, but I think the window might have been missed between season two and season three, and season four. Like, okay, now we're sort of heading into homesteads, but I think the chance to really convert to homesteads and make this successful just didn't work out, unfortunately. So no, I don't think homesteads now are the savior. I think the future of Overwatch is, honestly, it could maybe Owl works. I'm not saying Owl is gone next year or anything, but I don't think we're going to see, oh yes, this revival into this big thing that is what everyone was originally hoping for. I think the local stuff is probably eventually going to be taken over by collegiate, where you have your more built-in fan base there. It'll never hit the success level that Owl was hoped for when collegiate, but you have a more forced local fan base, and you have a more forced local fan base at a audience attention level that makes sense in terms of it's an age group that makes sense for being more willing to watch it. And when you have a more set age group like that, it's also easier for advertising, for marketing. The ecostructure makes more sense. The ecosystem rather makes more sense for, hey, we have these esports arenas at colleges that places can go to. Am I standing for college because I do collegiate coaching? Yes, I am. But I actually think this may make more sense in the long run. Not like it'll be as profitable as, oh yes, we people had hoped OWL would be, but in terms of the returns, in terms of an ecosystem that works, that makes sense, that can run, that can actually attract the local interest, that's probably where it is. But hey, that's fine. Other people can disagree. Blizzard clearly wants a casual game anyway. They want the success of an esport though. In Germany, June Joust was streamed at 3 a.m. Yeah. Our YouTube channel clearly doesn't even take itself seriously. Just look at the thumbnails compared to other esports league. You're all cynical and bitter. Okay. That'll be 2 a.m. for the UK. Right. Streamers greater than OWL. Streaming makes more money. Well, as successful individual streamers make more money than very successful OWL players. Yes. If you make OWL, you could have. Well, yeah, that's mostly true, and I'm not going to disagree with that. And that's a bit of a problem with the ecosystem in general. In professional sports, if you're really good at basketball, for example, you can't go, well, I'm going to start a basketball summer camp, or I'm going to start my own league without spending a ton of money, anyways, and I'm going to go do this, and everyone's going to follow me. Like, you don't really have that option as a popular basketball player or a popular baseball player to go, hey, let's go do this instead, and monetize like that, which is potentially an issue because the most popular players don't necessarily stay in the league because they can simply make more money streaming. And I've chatted with one of the OWL team president. Well, I've chatted with. How much can I reveal here? I have chatted about exactly this topic with upper management for one of the companies that are in OWL, and they're very aware of this problem. And their view is, well, if people want to stream, they can stream, but they're not going to, match rates, for example, that happen elsewhere, that you can make in streaming. And that makes sense, but it creates an issue when you can make a lot more money streaming than you can playing, and it's actually also an easier schedule to stream, and you get to be your own boss, at least to a degree, when you stream, compared to being on a team. You have to work long hours on a team. Like, as a coach, as a player, you work long, hard hours. You can't really take a break except when the league break time works, and breaks that you do take, you feel like you're falling behind. Like, it is more stressful to coach a team, to play on a team, than it is to stream, and streaming makes you more money. Now you can say, hey, I have to go be successful in the league for a bit to get big enough. Like, Sleepy's a successful streamer right now, and no one knew who Sleepy was until Sleepy played an OWL. So could Sleepy have done what he did if he didn't go first play an OWL? No, he probably couldn't have. But now he can, and that's fine. But how long is that going to last? Because people are going to care about the league less, viewers, as there's streaming options to watch. That's a tough one. That is certainly a tough one to solve. Somewhat bug for May, so the times at 10 were more accessible. Dylan's a wee bit late, that's fine. You guys are more talking about times. Yeah, the local fan base is huge. I mean, most of the SF Shock probably think if you're talking about. Wait. Yeah. I mean, most of the SF Shock probably think if you're talking about Bart, you mean a Simpson. That's probably true. It's probably true. Streamers are more fun to watch than OWL for sure. And that's a little bit of a problem for the success of a league because, like, Overwatch is a very strategic game that I think is fun to analyze, is fun to look at, and you need the pro play to be able to analyze, to be able to look at. That's more interesting than analyzing a ladder game, and the pro play perhaps informs how the game should be played, and that's really cool and interesting. But for the average viewer, unless someone can break it down in real time, like, that's the problem. I can break down OWL and make it digestible, like Blas said, and that's cool, but I'm frequently doing that with pauses. I'm frequently doing that with, hey, let's pause, let's talk about this, let me go show you 6 different things that are happening in a team fight at once, because they all actually matter, and I can't possibly talk fast enough. I definitely can't talk fast enough with enough detail to explain those things to you in real time. And we have casters who try, who can sort of break some of this stuff down, casters who are better at it, like Jake has been, where it's like, hey, they have the experience, or Avast, where they have the experience, they can sort of talk about it, they're able to do that, but you still can't go, and I could do something similar, but you still can't go at the speed you'd need to for the audience to follow. Something like Goats looks boring, even though it can be made interesting and fun. If you go slow through it, well, then you have less flashiness, less fun going on, etc., and that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So it's really hard with the pace at which Overwatch happens and the level of complexity involved in it to make that interesting. But you sort of have to have an ecosystem that makes the rest of the game fun to talk about. Like, you sort of need that ecosystem for streamers. You don't need it for streamers to exist, but you sort of need it for the game to. You need it for the developers to keep pouring money into it. How's that? uh, okay. What about a special fan-made league that did happen along the NBA's? Oh, we've had old alternate leagues to these things, but they've never survived. The football, American football, so with the pigskin, has had alternate leagues, didn't survive. We've seen alternate leagues, but they don't last. Some of that might be hey Monopoly power type stuff. Some of that might be things like, yeah, we'll leave it that as monopoly power type stuff. And you're not going to be able to do that. And this is one of the reasons that the Olympics refused to include esports. They considered it, they strongly considered it, but they said no. They didn't want to do esports because the developers maintain too much intellectual property control, unlike baseball, unlike basketball, unlike soccer. Unlike football, they maintain too much intellectual property control. Someone owns it, they can patch it, they maintain the IP, and that's why the Olympics went away from esports there. And I think that's also why you won't see a big fan-made league, because it would not be allowed to be big. Actually need licenses to host tournaments from Blizzard, and that's just not going to work, needing licenses to host tournaments. They're not going to allow the competition to exist. And I understand why. They made the product. They don't want another esport to get away from them, like Dota, which was basically made off of their assets, got away from them. They don't want, like, StarCraft, which they didn't make money off of. StarCraft 1, I'm talking about, which they feel they should have. I totally understand it, but it becomes very unattractive for someone else to invest their time, their soul, their energy into something that they can't control, they don't actually have control ownership of, and that someone else can just say, no, you can't do this intellectual property violation anymore. So that's not likely to happen, a fan-made league, unless Blizzard just totally backs out of the scene. And that could happen. If Blizzard goes, nope, esport, we're done, etc., then fans could come in and try to revive it. But then at that point, you're blowing on, sparks in a fire that's gone out to try to revive it. So now as a stepping stone for streaming, not good position for Blizzard to be in. I mean, Overwatch League 2 could be good. They could release a new game. Like, there's options. Blizzard hasn't really been able to stick the landing in esports, but this hasn't been a complete failure either, and this wasn't all their fault. Like I said, something happened. They might have found the winning recipe. They just acted too slow on Goats, and then they weren't able to go live how they wanted or quickly enough with local events, because there was a hunger for that. That could have been successful, I think. Streamers can stream the time they queue for rank so many hours of the day. Most OWL players do. Streamers can stream the time they queue ranked for many hours of the day, though. Most OWL players do. I'm going to need more context there. Like, yes, streamers do stream when they queue for ranked. It's more exhausting than them just queuing for ranked. Like, streaming is more exhausting than just playing, and they know that. And anyone who understands what streaming is can tell you that. There's a need to be entertaining. Streaming is in making its money off of, hey, we're either just so good that they want to be watched, or you're making your money off of sort of being a talk show host where you're being entertaining, you're making sure stuff is there, you're always on in some way. So streaming is more exhausting than just playing for most of them. But yes, that is something that they can do. But how much of it do you want them doing? Like, if I'm coaching a team and I want to make my team as absolutely competitive as possible, I don't want my players doing too much to extra wear themselves out. And again, baseball, football, soccer, they don't have these things. They don't have this level of fan interaction. They also don't have to worry about the level of fan interaction where they get mentioned on Reddit and they go see it. They get tweets and they interact with it. They go stream and people can talk to them directly. Like, big time meat sports players don't have to worry about that, and it builds a different ecosystem. And if you're going to handle that ecosystem, it makes more sense in a lot of ways to handle it full time. Hmm. With the point of Owl not being as fun as watching a streamer, I mean, it is just bad broadcasters. Sort of. There's simply going to be more overhead because you need an observation crew and you need casters. And I agree, the casters can level up over time. The casters can get better and better. And in some ways, the casters have leveled up over time. So, yes, I think some of that is bad broadcasters. Which isn't me saying, oh, the broadcast team is terrible, but that does need to continue leveling up as it does in any sport. So, yes, there's definitely truth there, Crunch. Not even bad, actually. Right. Broadcasters who simply aren't suited for what they need to do, since Al is really hard to do. Al is really hard to do, yes. But then it becomes, hey, if it's really, really hard to cast Al well, you're going to have to pay them more. Well, there's already potentially not enough money in the ecosystem because your players can already make more money by going and streaming. And you also need to pay observers. And you also need to cover for the fact of, okay, if we're doing LAN, well, LAN should be a net money maker. We're going to have costs there. Like this gets a little challenging. There's enough there, but for the level of effort that goes into organizing this, it sort of becomes a, is this a good return on the amount of, like, there's a return on it, yes, but is there enough of a return to justify the amount that goes into it? Like, you can get, again, I don't know exactly what the returns have looked like on investment, but that's always the question. Are the returns good enough to justify the investment? At this point, a lot of the money is already in, so hey, keep doing it as long as it's providing any return. But that is the question. Some of the presenting was totally cringe, charmingly so. They've sometimes surfed off of charmingly bad cringe. Jake needs his own show. When he's not playing, he did streaming and stuff. I mean, he's playing more now. Well, they told us that, oh no, he's just going to coach, and then he ended up as a bit of a brig specialist there. But he was doing streaming. He was talking about it. Would I be open to being a caster? Maybe, maybe. Yeah, I could probably do that. Yeah, potentially. It's not something I would have to put some work in to really get good at that because you all know which of the two caster roles I would fulfill, and I could put some work into it to get good at that. I'd have to look at what the compensation looks like. Probably worth it. Probably makes sense. Uh, but again, it would be a where do I want to enter thing. Like, casting would probably be, I'd probably use casting much how players used it, where it's like, do this to get more mainstream, to get more known, and then go over to streaming, because okay, now you're a more known person, and now you go over and do analysis as your own thing, and whoops, you make more doing that. You have more relaxed hours doing that, etc. The problem is the break-in isn't great. I mean, you guys saw the articles about how the entry level for casting really was paying less than what it should. They were getting rid of not even veteran, but like journeyman casters to bring in newbie casters, or using the threat of bringing in newbie casters to pay their journeyman casters like nothing on the teams that were doing casting for open division, for even contenders in some cases, that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's the sort of thing where it's like, would I be willing to do that? Yes, if the opportunity was there, but I'd also be willing to coach Owl or to general manage an L team. I'd be willing to do any of these things if the right money was there. Is it something that I'm actively pursuing? No. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. Jake from Safe Farm. Not that Jake. Uh, I missed some of the stuff from the Blizzard Arena. The Blizzard Arena was nice. I did go there for the Season 0 Contenders playoffs, and that was fun. Owl players, my bad. Super in Space. You do both Owl and streaming. Yeah, we got what you were talking about. Okay. Players have time of the day where they play outside of scrim and they can stream this? No. Like, yes, they can, but if I was coaching a team to maximum performance and I actually had full control and winning was everything to all of the players, we would not have them be streaming. We honestly, you'd try to pull them off of Reddit, Twitter, and everything as well. Like, that would be better for them. It is more exhausting to stream than to just play. And while you do want your players playing outside of scrims, outside of practice, so that they can keep polishing their skills, working on their things, streaming is different. Like, remember, guys, when I'm telling you to get better, I'm telling you to use 5 to 15% of your brain power to work on improving on one thing. Well, okay, that's there. What if you're also using 10% of your brain power to 20% of your brain power to make things a little more entertaining, to talk, to think about what you should say. And you better think about what you should say, because if you say the wrong thing, it's a huge net negative to your team, because you say something like you insult a player, you rage at someone, you just go off the handle when you get tilted, you say something that is cancel worthy, whatever, and that was a huge net negative to your team. So you have to be using at least this much brain power. Well, if you're using this much brain power for this and you're trying to use this much brain power for this, you don't have enough to play, and you're going to play terribly, and you're going to feel bad, and you're going to lose SR, and that's also bad, etc. So, like, I guess this is what's going to get dropped in favor of this, and now you playing all these extra hours, it's making you some money, but it's not helping you win, it's not helping you get better. So no, I disagree with that, actually. I'm not actually in a position to change the infrastructure, and neither is anyone else really, because players are not going to accept contracts that don't allow them to stream, because again, there's too much money there, and they want to be building their audience so that when they do retire, when they do exit, they have the potential to do a streaming career. That's just how the ecosystem works. But no, from a purely competitive standpoint, that's not great. And it's not the same thing to be like, oh, well, just stream while you're doing that. If you just stream you playing the game, and you don't put anything into being entertaining, you better be the best. The best at the game. And I don't mean, oh, OWL players are all pretty good. I mean, like, the best. Like, top 5, period, no questions asked. And they're just watching you play, and you're ignoring chat, you're ignoring everything, and even though you're ignoring them completely and not thinking about anything and not talking and not doing any of that, you're still getting some subscribes, getting some donations, getting things like that. Like, that's what it takes. And most streamers are not that. Most streamers are mixing in entertainment. And they have to, because they're mostly in the talk show host, radio host territory. They're too worried about the sports person. No, we're not talking about that. Then you get into discount rates and such. What is that tied to? Sorry, I don't know what that's tied to. Uh, so as a stepping stone. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Do I feel like a talk show host yet? Sort of. Sort of. Temporal needs proper monetary incentives to cast. Exactly. I sort of feel like a talk show host. What I cover talk show host wise is Overwatch and sometimes other video game related stuff. But yeah, I feel a bit like a talk show host. Do casters undergo the same type of training that traditional casters would go through? I don't know enough about the training that traditional casters go through. Golden Boy has done amazing from his esports broadcasting. Okay. Uh, one game report on stream would get you canceled. Uh, you need a serious amount of brain power to what you say the what you say the you need a serious amount of brain power to what you say the bigger you get. Not following. Jeremy Clarkson, big TV star in the UK, was talking recently about his fear of being canceled, even from something 10 years ago. Well, that's the thing. When it comes to being canceled, you never know what is going to be considered offensive in the future, which is a problem. But also, humor is one of the ways that we as a society and we as people deal with things that are potentially offensive or things that potentially need to be said, need to be let out, etc. And even that is in a delicate place right now. So being canceled is a problem, and we all know it's a problem, but it doesn't seem to be something that we're getting rid of in society. So I don't know what to tell you. There isn't a 100% safe way to do that. And there isn't a 100% safe way to go through life, so maybe that's okay, but it's dicey. It's not a good thing. Thank you, Blah. Thank you. I don't know who Jeremy Clarkson is. Did some weird things if he was afraid of being canceled. Yeah, I don't know who he is or what he did. So that, yeah. Funniest person in the UK, to be honest. Okay. I mean, Owl is a stepping stone for getting your streaming career off the ground. I think that's the right way to think about it from a financial perspective if you're a player. Yes. I think some of the players, especially when they're younger, and before they've done Owl, I just want to compete, I just want to be the best, etc. And that's understandable. I want to compete, I want to be the best is totally understandable. But as you get into it, you either realize, holy cow, the best is really, really good. I don't want to keep working this hard. Or A, this is really, really hard. Or C, I simply can't. And if I can't be the very best, like no one ever was, then I instead want to make pretty darn good money over here. Because it's a ton of work to not even be the very, very best. One day it'll be cancelable to say Overwatch was a good game. Cancel culture is 21st century McCarthyism. Yeah, yeah, it is. Uh, XQC handled that very well. XQC managed to get himself. XQC sort of shot the moon a little bit. He got actually banned. Like, he actually had time that he was banned from Overwatch over something that most people think didn't make any sense. Like, he did some stuff where it's like, okay, he got banned, whatever, but he got an actual ban from playing the game Overwatch on his account for a meaningful length of time over an event that people thought was nonsense, which is, hey, they want to tune into him because there's controversy around him. The controversy around him, most people felt wasn't really fair. Like, he was the one actually getting treated improperly over it, and that meant he also got to go be a variety streamer without anyone holding it against him that he wasn't playing Overwatch. Like, his Overwatch fans weren't in any way upset at him for going and playing different games because he couldn't play Overwatch, and he couldn't play Overwatch over something that most people viewed as not his fault, and he had extra attention on him because, hey, he got banned again for something that most people viewed as not his fault. Like, that was a beautiful little ride. He kind of got lucky in how that happened. And it happened to him when he was already big enough for it to make, press releases, make news story, get lots of social media coverage, Reddit coverage, all that stuff. That was very good for him. And it also helped that it sort of happened at a time when Twitch was still in even though they don't have a perfect relationship with him because he's not exactly the type of personality he wants, they were struggling to find a good big personality that they were comfortable with because two of their big ones had left, and a third one they had an even worse, like, this isn't who we want to be partnered with, etc. We don't want this to be the face of Twitch. XQC turned getting canceled into a career via an owl job. Well, other people have turned getting canceled into a career too. That doesn't mean I think it's a good thing, because while there's room for some people to get canceled, the public to be outraged over they're canceled, and these people end up bigger as a warning against canceling in the future of, like, look how bad it is and they want to talk about it. There's room in society for some people to get canceled, to talk about getting canceled and get bigger platforms as a result of it. There's not room for everyone that gets canceled to do that. There's not room for, a guy who drives for San Diego Electric to go, hey, I drive for San Diego Electric as an electrician, and he flashed an OK sign at someone, and someone took a picture of it and then went and called his company, and he gets fired because he flashed an OK sign, and people think that is I don't even think I want to say that word on that stream, but they think that is a symbol of something that is not good, and he doesn't even know it. He's a Hispanic guy who's flashed the OK symbol, and as a result, he gets fired. And obviously, he's not that bad thing, but cancel culture ramps up. Does this guy who I'm talking about now have some illustrious streaming career or some illustrious Substack or anything like that? No, he does not. And we could go into lots more examples like this, but they get covered in the news once or zero times, and it hurts them, and they struggle to get another job, and they struggle to go start a new business or whatever like that. Anyway, we don't need to make this whole thing about cancel culture. Uh, but yes, in video games, it can be done well. Um, Remember when May became the symbol of Blizzard bowing to? Yeah, yeah. Um, Cancel culture is 21st century McCarthyism is the best thing I've heard to describe it. Yeah, that's about right. Was he banned? Yes, he was banned. I mean, he got fined in Owl a couple times. He got banned from some Owl matches. But what really took off for him is he got banned actually from playing the game Overwatch. Like, he got banned from playing the game Overwatch off of something that most people thought was nonsense. And because he couldn't play for like 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, whatever it was, he had to go become a variety streamer, of course, which was probably something he wanted to do anyways, but you don't have your fans going, hey, we want you to do more Overwatch when that happens to you. It was like, here's your swift kick in the butt to get going on this thing that it was time in his career, for the right time in his career to go do anyways. Right, XQC was one of the lucky ones there. Uh, XQC is basically Jordan Peterson. I have to think about that. XQC is basically Jordan Peterson. Yeah, Jordan Peterson had the backing of his university administration when he made the moves that he did, didn't lose his job over it, and was able to spin it into big stuff. Yeah, I'd say that's about right. Um, Jordan Peterson perhaps seeked it a little more. I don't know that he like hard suck it, seeked that, but like he chose to make a stand on that issue. I don't know if XQC chose to make a stand the same way. You could say that. You could say, hey, XQC has cultivated a certain personality that he displays on stream, that he displays on screen, etc. And he decided, I'm going to do this even when it's controversial, even when it's dangerous, even when it keeps getting me banned. So you could say he seeked it in a certain way. And I'm not saying like Jordan Peterson hardcore was like I'm seeking to go do this thing. I mean, according to him, hey, he was doing it based off of his values, and that's fine. Um, yeah, yeah, I suppose that's a fair comparison. He used an official Twitch emote at a time that Blizzard had. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that word too much. This stream is already getting dangerous enough in terms of what YouTube likes to be talked about, so I'm going to be careful with reading some of your guys' chats. True perfection is when you can't even describe a scenario with what his reason for cancellation would be for fear of YouTube demonetization. Isn't it great? Uh, okay. 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 Yes, that's going to do that. It looks like I'm caught up on chat here. So we can jump over and take a look at the Reddit thread just to keep things going since it looks like people are interested. I'll give you guys some more time to get questions in chat there to continue the conversation. If we don't see anything interesting in the thread or in chat, we'll go ahead and move on here. Here, this can have an upvote. It's interesting. Okay, let's do a refresh to make sure that we've got all the freshest comments here. 25 insane decrease. It's a big decrease, but we expected a decrease. I again think it's too big, but it's not like, oh my god, end of the world. Um, Major concern is all other leagues have seen huge gains. Yeah, that's meta was boring to watch. High agreement there. If Texas holds charge, that's not interesting. Here, we're just releasing the numbers. Again, 6.3 million watched versus 4.7 million watched. Nothing else. Everything's too recent for me to see the votes because this is a very fresh thread. This is actually a decent theory. My theory is that the weekend of no games, there was a weekend that was taken off, and then it breaks a habit. Habits are, hey, if you continue it for long enough, for 30 days or so, it becomes a habit to keep doing a thing. And this would have helped a lot of people break the watch habit and then not come back because they went and filled that weekend with something else. Meta was boring, but that's got 0 upvotes. Probably because we've seen it before. Okay, nothing too interesting in the Reddit thread. The article was much, much more interesting. Okay. You enjoyed Al more on Twitch than on YouTube, but I don't know why. I think maybe the chat was more fun. I could see that. Twitch has a different chat culture than YouTube does. Twitch also has much more enabled in terms of emotes attached to people's specific channels, things like that. That's again one of the reasons Twitch is more set up in the streaming world than YouTube currently. I'm thinking YouTube will move there, and I hope to ride that wave up. But hey, or I hope to be positioned to ride that wave up, I suppose is the better way of putting that. Reddit, it wasn't that interesting, unfortunately. Moira's meta, it even got her a nerf. That was so weird that she got a nerf. Like, that was so weird that she got a nerf. Oh, would also be more interesting with new heroes. I like Winston too, man, but I would prefer Winston in real dive metas, not metas that are we're gonna run dive heroes, but we're gonna play it like it's brawl, like it's rush even, where we're just gonna jump into the fight, basically immediately, or we're not, but only because it's a mirror are we not going to. Like when you forgo staging, it's not fun. I like my stealthy 600-pound gorilla that sneaks up the sides and jumps on people. Uh, I was on Overwatch less and often see Al from the live button on Overwatch, but because you were playing less, didn't see it. Be positioned to. We'll take that credit, but I'm streaming. I try. If you support a specific team, you have to wait longer to watch them play, often once a week or more. Yep. With 40 games, you saw more of your team. True. There also was more in general, but there's also more cost in theory in general. Okay. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else there, so I think we're going to go ahead and call this here. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do like and subscribe, as that helps out quite a bit, and I really do appreciate it. If you guys want to be here for when I go over these chats, you want to get involved, you want to have your own discussions, you want to, since we've been talking about talk shows, be the callers, and in this case, be the chatters that I then respond to and such, the best way to do that live is to join my Discord in the description below, and then go into get notifications. If you click into the get notifications channel and react to get the watcher rule, you will get Discord pings when I go live. So you can be here to discuss these types of things or see if the topic that we're covering is something that is interesting to you to be here. So I highly recommend that. YouTube bell works too, but the YouTube bell is kind of iffy, just like stream notifications on Twitch are a bit iffy. So I recommend through the Discord there. I'm not seeing anything else, so I think we're going to go ahead and call it here.